Hi, folks. God bless you. Love to everybody out there. Like my new haircut. This is Reverend Jason in Ghana, Accra. Just sharing with you some thoughts about Henry Martyn. I'm halfway through this biography and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm enjoying looking at the life of Henry Martyn. George Verwer says Henry Martyn, 1781 to 1812, lived a short but worthwhile life. Many things could have been kept away Many things could have kept him away from the mission field, his health, his scholarship, even his love, but he disregarded them all to obey what he knew to be God's highest call for his life. Now let me burn out for God, exclaimed the 26-year-old Englishman who arrived in Calcutta in May 1806, and so his ambition was fulfilled, but he probably had little idea how fast the blaze would consume him. Eager to devote his life to the Lord's work, with an incredible determination and unselfish dedication, Henry Martyn compressed a lifetime into 6 years of overseas service in India and Persia. His efforts, attitude, and approach were very important in reaching Muslims with the gospel, and the enduring memory of his life is incomparable value unto this day. George Verwer said, surely this is one of the most important, relevant biographies in the history of missions. A previous smaller biography of Henry Martyn made an impact on me, and so I was excited to see this more extensive presentation. I also found the other biographical sketches of people like David Brainerd and Charles Simeon very interesting. I pray that God will use this book to increase interest in the Muslim world, which is still the greatest challenge facing the Church of Jesus Christ. That's George Verwer. So there's some really interesting things in this book. He had a brilliant academic career. Someone's just made a comment. Rick says, what do you think about the Islamic view of Jesus? I think it's a Gnostic view. You know, the Gnostics came after the Gospels. You know, the four Gospels. You had Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then you had the Gnostic Gospels. Well, the Islamic view really is a Gnostic view of Jesus. So you have the story of Jesus in the Quran turning, I think, what was it? Turning dust into birds and things like that when Jesus is a boy. Doing crazy things like that. These are kind of so I think Muhammad got his ideas from the Gnostic Gospels, and then took a bit from the Gospel of Luke, the birth narrative, and then just put all these Gnostic stuff in. And so Muhammad's view is that Jesus is a prophet. He had a virgin birth. Hello, he got that from the Gospel of Luke, by the way. Jesus had a virgin birth. It even says in the Quran, Jesus is the Word. So there's little bits of the four Gospels in there, but most of it's these Gnostic Gospels, which basically summed up is Jesus is a prophet, basically. So I don't think much of it really, because Jesus in the Bible is prophet, priest, and king, but he's also the Son of God. And when it says there is no God but Allah and he does not have a son, if you go into the early hadiths and look at the early hadiths, that's the tales of Muhammad. It's interesting when he went to embark on taking a city, like crushing a city. So that statement in the hadith where it says God is one and there is no God but Allah and he does not have a son. When Muhammad was going into battle, when he was going into cities, he would quote this, right? And the reason he would quote it, it was a battle statement. It was an act of war statement, because he would go in and crush anybody who believed Jesus was the Son of God. So I looked at the early hadiths and noticed that when Muhammad says there is no God but Allah and his son, he does not have a son, yeah, it was a declaration of war. Yeah, it's just a little scholarly point there about Muhammad. I don't view Muhammad very highly, as you can see. I think he was a charlatan, a liar, a thief, a murderer. I think he was an evil man, to be honest, a deceptive man. I mean, just compare him to the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul had no money, no sex. Yeah, no money, no sex, no fame. Muhammad had tons of sex, tons of money, and tons of fame. So who do you think is going to be the most liar there? The one who is humble, serving for people, not wanting anything for himself, or the man who wants money, sex, and power? Which one is more likely to lie, Muhammad or the Apostle Paul? And yet the Muslims are always saying Paul's the liar. Hello, I'm sorry, it's Muhammad that's the liar. Yeah, he's lying. He's lying through his back teeth, and you Muslims have been deceived totally and utterly. All right? And if you find that offensive, well, I find it offensive when you call the Apostle Paul a liar. All right? So I just want to show you a couple of things. Abdul Masa, 1776 to 1827, this Muslim guy, well, that's a picture when he became a Christian. The Muslim guy there is now a Christian there. He became a Christian under Henry Martyn's ministry. So Henry Martyn gave his life. He had a brilliant academic career. He was brilliant at mathematics. He could have had a professorship at mathematics. But he gave it up. He gave it all up just to be a missionary. He loved a woman. He really loved a woman, and he gave that up. You know, he really, really gave everything up to be a missionary. And I'm just showing you that one of the things that Henry Martyn did was debate. He debated Muslims in India, and he debated them and gave answers for the faith. And one of his debate tactics is he would point out in Surah 29, 48, 50, Surah 28, 48, 49, he would point out where are the miracles that Muhammad did, because the Quran says he didn't do any miracles. In Surah 29, 48 and 50, Surah 28, 48 and Surah 28, 49 specifically teach that Muhammad didn't do any miracles. So why is it that Moses did miracles? Why is it Jesus did miracles? Why is it the apostles did miracles? And yet Muhammad couldn't do any miracles. So those Muslims who bring out the hadiths and say, oh, he did miracles like splitting the moon. Yeah, right. And my name's Arnold Schwarzenegger. If Muhammad split the moon, I'm not Jason Burns. I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah? How come in Surah 29, 48, 50, chapter 29, verse 48 to 50, Surah 28, 48 to 49, how come Muhammad didn't do any miracles? Your own Quran teaches it. So he was a fake. He was a total and utter fake. So I just want to share this really. That's a picture of William Carey. He was in India. Yeah. But I'm just halfway through, and basically Henry Martyn, he studies at Cambridge. He's a brilliant academic, brilliant at mathematics, brilliant at languages, brilliant. He's brilliant at everything he touches. He falls in love with this woman, and he called Lydia, and he's torn between marrying her or being a missionary. Torn between an academic career and being a missionary. In the end, he believes God's calling him to be a missionary. Charles Simeon, who's a great, mighty man of God in the Church of England. Oh, he was an awesome man. It was said of when John Wesley and George Whitefield were arguing about Calvinism and Arminianism. It was said of Charles Simeon, he says, I'm a Calvinist on my knees and an Arminian on my feet. So, yeah, Charles Simeon was a great man. So that's a great man there. That's William Carey. He was a great missionary, Baptist man, not Anglican. And so anyhow, Charles Simeon said to, you couldn't just go to these countries and do mission work, because there was what they called the East Indian Company, and they kind of ran the show in the British Empire for trade, and they didn't like missionaries for quite a while. And that was the office. It's now been pulled down, but the East India Company office is there. It's now been pulled down. It was pulled down years ago. It was pulled down in 1862. But that's the office there. And the East Indian Company kind of ruled the roost and wouldn't let missionaries go in when Henry Martyn was a missionary. But Charles Simeon, the great Anglican evangelical minister at Cambridge, was a friend of Henry Martyn's. He was like a father figure to Henry. And Henry listened to him and he said, why don't you be a chaplain for the East Indian Company? So he became a chaplain and he was sent to India. He went to Calcutta and he was a chaplain to I think 8,000 British soldiers. While he was there, he was longing for this Lydia that he was in love with. He had bad chest before he even went. And it was said, if you go on mission, you're going to die, but he still went, yeah. And he does translation work, translates various New Testaments in various foreign languages in that area. And he's struggling with his health, he's struggling with the heat. And it's not easy, he's finding it really, really, really difficult, really, really tough, you know. And that's what I'm up to at the minute. But I just want to share this really. Henry Martyn gave up a brilliant academic career. He could have been a professor of mathematics. He gave up Lydia, who he truly loved with all his heart. He gave up his health. He gave up fame, because he'd have been famous in his day. He gave up a lucrative career with money. He gave it up all to be a missionary for God. Paul said, for me to live is Christ, in the book of Philippians. What are you willing to give up for the Lord today? Are you willing to lay everything down and say, Lord, here I am, send me. What do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? And the Lord will drop it on your heart. You'll know what you should do. He'll drop it on your heart. But he's waiting for you to say, here I am, Lord. And are you willing to pay the price? I'll never forget listening to a message by Paul Washer. It's a brilliant little message. It's only a few minutes long, and it was brilliant. It was very powerful. He said, to be famous today. He said, why don't you find a hill? Why don't you find a hill to die on? And the challenge to you today is Henry Martyn found a hill to die on. He went to India. He went to Persia. He had poor health. He gave up an academic career. He gave up Lydia, who he loved. And his hill ended up being Persia, reaching the Muslims for Christ. And he left a legacy. People still remember him today for the sacrifice that he gave. What hill are you willing to die on today? Where are you willing to go if God sends you? Are you willing to go where he wants you to go? Maybe it's to them youth down the corner of your church. Maybe it's to the local drug addicts. Maybe it's to the local mums, and you start mums and toddlers. Maybe is your own family need you for you to minister to them. What hill does God want you to die on today? So you forget about yourself, you forget about your needs, and you start to think about the cause of God and the needs of those around you. Henry Martyn is very inspirational. It's very gut-wrenching, really, because it's like watching a boxer getting into the ring and seeing his guts being poured out. And reading this, I'm almost in tears now. Watching a man pour out his life for Jesus, and it was tough for him. It was so hard for him. His illness, he couldn't breathe. Often he couldn't breathe. He was just struggling with breathing. And they told him, if you go on mission to India, it's going to be even worse. But he went, and he sacrificed himself. This coronavirus is really, really difficult for people. It's really hard, but this is a time to dig in and to not give up. It's a time to read Psalm 31. Read Psalm 31 and the first 5 verses of Psalm 31. And it says, God is a refuge, a strength, a rock. And it keeps repeating it. God is a refuge, a strength, a rock. And God's your refuge, your strength, and your rock. And He's going to help you. He's going to be with you. Wherever He sends you, whatever you're doing for Him, He is your rock. He is your refuge. He is your strength. So draw upon God's strength. Draw upon God in your ministry. Let Him guide and lead your ministry. Let Him show you the way in your ministry. Let Him guide you and take you forward in your ministry. He is your rock, your refuge, your strength. Read Psalm 31 verse 1 to 5. But I'm challenging you today. What are you willing to give back to God for what He's done for you? You know, President Donald Trump, he pardoned a Mr. Stone just recently. It's on Fox News. He pardoned Mr. Stone. Mr. Stone was wrongfully tried and was about to be sent to prison. It was a jumped up charge, and the jury was jumped up and the judge was jumped up. It was all a facade. It was all false. He could have gone to jail and he could have died because he was an elderly man. He was asthmatic. But you know, Franklin Graham and some news reporters and politicians who knew the Lord shared about Jesus and said, look, trust in the Lord and He will guide you. So President Donald Trump pardoned him at expense to himself, because he was told not to do it because it was an election year, but he went against advice and he let him out, set him free. You know what Mr. Stone said? He said, I give my life to Jesus Christ. I give my life to Jesus Christ. Are you going to give your life to Christ today and serve Him? You're wondering what future you've got, what purpose you've got, how things going. Maybe your business has crashed. Maybe because of this COVID-19, I've got to go, my wife with her youth group. Maybe everything's falling apart, but He's got a future. But you've got to hand over to Jesus. And then, I'm going to be with you in a second, just making a video. The USB. Okay, my wife wants the USB. You got a new girl, have you?
Yeah. Claudia.
Claudia, okay. How old is she?
14.
Okay, well done. So, you got to find a hill to die on and be ready to serve the Lord. Give your life to the Lord and serve Him. Ask Him what He wants you to do with His life and He'll guide you. Henry Martyn. Henry Martyn. You can get a free copy of Henry Martyn's life by another guy called Sargent, his friend. You can get that, I think, free PDF, or you can get it at Banner Truth Trust. All right. God bless you. Just a little encouragement for you. People have gone before us and sacrificed their lives, so don't be discouraged. Serve the Lord wherever He's put you. God bless you. And those who love Muslims and want to share the gospel to Muslims, may I encourage you to get yourself a copy of Henry Martyn, because I love Muslims and one of my passions in life is to reach Muslims with the gospel. So may I encourage you to read Henry Martyn and be inspired to reach Muslims. God bless you. Take care.